Good morning. Yeehaw. Nice to see all of you here this morning on this November 21st, both here in our sanctuary live and also tuning in, streaming as it were, on Zoom. Welcome to everyone who is watching and listening this day. I'm Jeff Barz-Snell. We welcome you to our service. We are going to begin this service with a brief call to worship found in your order of service. For the sun and the dawn which we did not create, for the food which we plant but cannot grow,
for friends and loved ones we have not earned and cannot buy,
for this gathered company which welcomes us as we are from wherever we have come.
Gifts of life and life and refreshment, we lift our hearts and thanks.
And we're now going to have an introduction to our opening hymn, and then I will invite all of you to stand up in just a moment for singing our hymn. Peace of God be with you. I invite you to take a moment and greet one another standing nearby, or feel free to text someone if you are so inclined, who is virtually. I'd now like to welcome forward Sue and Liz Newberry, who are going to be lighting our chalice for this morning.
Good morning. For all of life and the gifts that we hold sacred, we give thanks this day. for opportunities to move the world and our lives in the direction of justice, compassion, and peace. We give thanks this day. This time of year, as we think of the many ways we are thankful, one may become aware of so much we take for granted. And I'm thinking of church, our church. Over the past 20 months, our leaders and members have found ways to have our church available for us, here and at home. Most things in life don't just happen. People make them happen. Our ministers give us spiritual guidance and prayers in our church community. We give our thanks this day. Our youth group, child care coordinator, administrator, committee heads, and members who help the church function, keep us aware, informed, and involved with those in need. The team who brought and are bringing the church services to us at home. We give our thanks this day. The music, our choir director, our choir and organist. We give thanks this day. For those we loved and lost, how thankful and grateful we are for the time we shared together. On this Sunday before Thanksgiving, we light our chalice out of abundance of gratitude for those blessings and the many more we enjoy in our lives. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Sue and Liz. And now, the Reverend Sarah Napoleon. Sarah,
Yep.
what are you doing?
Well, I'm doing yoga. What? Oh, sorry. Maybe this isn't.
A warrior pose during the service?
Yes. So you see, I do yoga. I've been doing yoga for many years, as you know, and I actually was just certified to be a yoga teacher. And well, so yoga is actually called a yoga practice. And so you have to practice it to, do well at it, and you have to practice it to get the benefits of it. And so I was practicing because it's really important, but maybe I'll practice a little later. But you see, the more you do yoga, the more you incorporate these different things into your life, the more that you get the benefits, the deep breathing, the peace, the calm, the steadiness that you can bring from a physical posture, a physical pose, out into the rest of your life. And so that's what a yoga practice is about. And I know that that's part of how I stay healthy and well. And I'm actually excited to bring that to First Parish. We're going to do a yoga class sometime between now and Christmas, just a centering class for the holiday season. And then in January, we're going to get started with a regular class here at First Parish that I'm excited to offer. And I know that's how I stay healthy. Jeff, I know you exercise. And exercise is something that people do, and it's not just a noun, it's a verb. You exercise something, right? You exercise your will or your gratitude or your appreciation and generosity. And that's what Thanksgiving and the holidays are all about, remembering to exercise these things, remembering that we need to practice them in order to make them stronger and more a part of our everyday life. And so I'm excited to practice yoga, even if maybe not right now. And I'm excited to practice gratitude and generosity every day. And with that, I invite the kids to come with me out to our class for the day.
Larry Unger and Eric Boudman, thank you very much. Our reading for this morning comes from the Book of Deuteronomy, the fifth book in the Bible, the fifth book in what's called the Hebrew Bible by folks these days. I want to share with you a section from chapter 8, verses 10 through 18. You shall eat your fill and bless the Lord your God for the good land that he has given you. Take care that you do not forget the Lord your God by failing to keep his commandments, his ordinances, and his statutes, which I am commanding you today. When you have eaten your fill and have built your fine houses and live in them, and when your herds and flocks have multiplied, and your silver and gold has multiplied, and your silver and all that you have is multiplied, then do not exalt yourself, forgetting the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, who led you through the great and terrible wilderness and arid wasteland with poisonous snakes and scorpions. He made water flow from you from flint rock and led you into the wilderness with manna that your ancestors did not know, to humble you and test you, and in the end to do you good. Do not say to yourself, my power and the might of my own have gotten me this wealth. But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, so that he may confirm his covenant that he swore to your ancestors, as he is doing today. Here ends the reading. Thank you, Larry and Eric. Last year, actually, when Larry and Eric played, it was strange since there was nobody here, and I thought they were fantastic. And there was only like 4 of us in the whole room listening to these guys. And they're so good, they actually sound like there's more than just 2 of them up there, because they're so tight. So thank you for being here again this day with a live audience, both here in the building and on Zoom today. So a few years ago, there was a group of psychological researchers connected to Indiana University in Bloomington that were studying the effects of psychotherapy on patients seeking treatment because of anxiety or stress in their lives. The researchers wanted to see what effect keeping a written journal might have on clinical outcomes. And they wanted to see if cultivating gratitude might have a real, demonstrable, measurable effect to patients. So they recruited a group of individuals starting psychotherapy, and they divided them up into 3 groups. The first group received 1 session a week of counseling or psychotherapy. The second group received the same counseling for 1 hour a week, but also was asked to do what was called an expressive writing practice. The group was asked to keep a journal for 15 minutes a day, which shouldn't be that hard for people seeking therapy for their struggles with anxiety. They basically were invited to write down whatever they want to for 15 minutes. In this log, they could say anything they wanted about their lives, their issues, but with the agreement that the researchers would be able to read, to review what they wrote down. That would change things probably, right? And then there was this third group. The third group, they too were instructed to keep a journal, but with one twist. They were also asked to write 1 letter each week to a person they knew, expressing gratitude for something they had done. This third group was asked to do this for 3 weeks in a row, which therapeutically speaking is actually not a long period of time. The research team used a standardized mental health assessment tool to measure everyone's mental health states before, during, and at the conclusion of the study. And what do you think they found? Well, it turns out that people in the group who had written gratitude letters each week reported feeling less stressed and less anxious than the other 2 groups. And this continued for 1 month after and 3 months after the study. The researchers were therefore able to answer their question in the affirmative. It turns out that fostering gratitude improves clinical outcomes of therapy. It's not just enough to vent in therapy with a counselor, though that sometimes helps. Can I get an amen? For therapy to be truly helpful and healing, it needs to help us to change our perspective. It needs to invite us to reconsider our relationship to the world and to others in a positive light. And it turns out that there's one more essential finding from this study. The researchers did this careful word analysis of the journal entries from groups 2 and 3 and the gratitude letters. And they counted the number of negative words and emotions expressed, and then they counted the number of positive words and expressions. And what they found is that the patients who used less negative words and focused instead on more positive items experienced the most significant improvement as measured 1 and 3 months later. Focusing only on negative emotions, focusing only on complaints sometimes made therapy harder. But focusing on positive emotions and cultivating gratitude, well, that truly seemed to make a difference. Now, some of you might be thinking to yourself, duh. Anyone who's ever been through the school of hard knocks can tell you that there is value. There is value in counting one's blessings, even amidst a difficult and challenging situation. It allows us to open ourselves to the support and to the compassion of others and checks our personal sense of entitlement and hubris, something we know nothing about in a place like Weston. We heard some variation of this in our reading this morning from the Book of Deuteronomy. Some of you might be familiar might be familiar with this passage. It comes early in this ancient book, or scroll, as our Jewish cousins call it. Deuteronomy is the fifth and final book of the Jewish Torah, which comprise the first 5 books of the Bible, what Christians call the Old Testament, and what most people in seminaries these days call the Hebrew Bible. Deuteronomy literally means second law, from the Greek, deuteronomos, second law. The book is, in a sense, a second telling of the revelation of the laws of Moses to the ancient Jews. This explains why there is a second account of Moses giving the 10 Commandments to the Jewish people in Deuteronomy chapter 5. Where's the first account of Moses giving the 10 Commandments to the Jewish people? Does anyone know? Exodus. Ding, ding, ding. That's correct. Exodus chapter 20 is the first account. The scroll or book of Deuteronomy was probably written a few centuries after Genesis and Exodus, and is concerned with the traditions and the laws that the Jewish people needed to observe as they were setting up a new nation in a difficult and contentious area of the Middle East. This was a story that the ancient Jews told about their shared origins as a people. It was their story that explained their history and their society. They started off as slaves in Egypt and were led out of bondage by Moses, an anointed leader of the one true God. They wandered in the desert for 40 years, and then they settled upon this region of land, of hilly, mountainous land, in the fertile crescent of the agricultural lands between the Mediterranean Sea on one side and the Jordan River on the other. It is a truly beautiful, beautiful place if you've ever been there. These books tell the stories of their journey from Egypt, from slavery in Egypt, to having their own country, their own kingdom in Israel. And it is here, in this retelling of this story, that we encounter that reading we heard this morning. Now, it's worth noting that this reminder to be thankful comes just 2 chapters after the famous giving of the 10 Commandments in chapter 6. Perhaps that makes sense. After the Jews have been told that they are a chosen people and blessed with a revealed set of rules by the one true God, they are reminded not to forget what is important during a time of prosperity. In the first section of the chapter, they are encouraged to remember who they are, to remember the struggles they face as a people and how fortunate they have actually been. They are reminded that they have been blessed with good harvests. They've been given a land flowing with milk and honey, a land that they did nothing to deserve. And this then is where that passage we heard is delivered. Take care. Take care that you do not forget the Lord your God by failing to keep his commandments, his ordinances, and his statutes. Remember, the 10 Commandments was just stated 2 chapters before. When you have eaten your fill, and when you have built fine houses, and when you live in them, and when your herds and flocks have multiplied, and your silver and gold is multiplied, and all that you have is multiplied, then do not exalt yourself, forgetting the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, who led you through the great and terrible wilderness. Do not say to yourself, my power and my might of my own hand gain me this strength and this wealth. But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you power. Remember not to take for granted the blessings you have been given, the blessings on which your lives depend and for which you have done little or nothing to deserve. Be careful in believing that you yourself are the captain of your own destiny and well-being all the time, and not see how many parts of your life depend on forces and circumstances far beyond any of your actions. It turns out that human nature was pretty much the same 2,700 years ago. when this was written. When things are going well, we overestimate our powers and abilities. And when things grow difficult, we realize how dependent we are on forces and developments beyond our control. If you don't believe me, then just talk to someone who thinks they're a financial genius because the S&P 500 has now gone up 24% in the last year. Certainly, we have just lived through one of those periods of difficulty, though. We have just spent the last 18 months in the grip of a viral pandemic that has forever changed our lives and our world. While we did nothing to deserve this virus, we are living, tragically some of us are still dying, with the devastating effects. Our lives and world are measured by how we have responded as a people, as a nation, and as a world. It's actually quite amazing how quickly the world had to change in order just to protect our lives and human life. And I don't know about you, but I find myself counting my blessings this fall as a result. I am grateful. I am grateful for the chance to go out and eat in a restaurant. I'm grateful for going to the grocery store. I'm grateful for all the medical personnel hard at work in hospitals around this country. I'm grateful for cutting-edge science and research and world-class companies that have developed several different vaccines in less than a year. It turns out that one viral research team had already analyzed the genome, had already figured out the genetic sequence of COVID-19 by March of last year, and began using their findings to develop a messenger RNA vaccine, the first of its kind in the history of the world, and is literally now flowing through some of our veins right in this room and protecting us. I am thankful for the overwhelming majority of folks here in Massachusetts and in other areas around the country and world that take public health science seriously and the protocols and the best ways to reduce the spread of an airborne respiratory virus. And I'm thankful for communities and churches like ours and people like us, as Sue so graciously acknowledged in her chalice lighting. We spent a year working and worshiping together at a distance, thanks to the at times frustrating miracles of online video platforms such as Zoom and Vimeo. This last year was one of the most challenging I have experienced as a parish minister, and I know I'm not alone among my colleagues in saying that. So I'm thankful for many of you who continue to participate in and support this community. This is a church full of bright and innovative folks who want to help and want to make a difference. Because of this community, a group of us started the Weston Cares Fund in April of 2020. Our goal was to create a local fund that could be used to help people suffering in the immediate area as a result of COVID-19. By Thanksgiving of last year, we had raised $85,000. And over last winter and spring, people continued to donate. I'm proud to say by the time we closed the Weston Cares Fund in September, we had raised over $200,000. $200,000. I'm also proud to report that every single penny of what was donated has gone to help local families and individuals suffering from housing and medical emergencies as a result of COVID-19. We forget how very different this pandemic has been to folks living within a 10-minute drive of where we are sitting this morning, if they have few, if any, resources. The K-shaped recovery that was described last year is and was a real phenomenon, with some of us rebounding just fine financially, and many others in the service economy facing undue hardship and challenges. The steering committee of the Weston Cares Fund met once a week, for the most part, during the pandemic, and we're able to give grants up to $1,000 to people desperately in need. We helped a young single mother keep her apartment when she was sick with COVID and was about to be evicted. We helped immigrant families who could not quarantine because too many folks were living in one apartment. We helped people who were hungry to buy food, and people who were homeless find temporary shelter. We helped at-risk kids attend school programs during the school day, since they couldn't stay at home on school days where they had no supervision and they had no internet connection. They literally could not even participate in school because they didn't have not even high-speed internet, like slow-speed internet. We helped children whose parents were in the hospital sick with COVID. And during all of this, many of us on the steering committee were reminded of our own blessings during this strange and challenging time. We were reminded, sometimes quite starkly, of how fortunate some of us truly are compared to the situations of those within 10 miles of where we work and live and have our lives. This action of counting your blessings is an important one, as the ancient writer of Deuteronomy reminds us. It connects us with something deep and profound about the nature of our lives. It can be so tempting at times to take our life situations for granted. And then boom, something happens to remind us that we are not fully in control. To remind us that we are dependent on the grace of God and the goodwill of others more than we sometimes care to admit. While all of us observe this holiday of Thanksgiving, I think we should also keep our attention on the observance of Thanks-living. One is a holiday, and the other is a way of life and a means of connection and transformation that can be cultivated in our lives over time. It's a practice. It's an observance, like yoga or the experiment that I described. So here's to Thanksgiving in 2021. Here's to counting your blessings even when we find ourselves struggling. Here's to remembering the people who have cared for us and helped us be where we are today. Here's to cultivating gratitude whenever and wherever we can and feeling like we are not alone on this strange and beautiful and sometimes challenging journey of life. I'd like to close with a litany of sorts, similar to the one that Sue Newberry so eloquently offered earlier. It's based on a piece by Jean Pickett. And you all have one line as I go through this. Ready? Giver of all, we thank thee. For the expanding grandeur of creation, for worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, for full moons that are bloody during an eclipse once every 700 years, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations. Giver of all, we thank thee. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and its tides, its sunsets and its seasons. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements, for human community, for our common past and our future hope. Our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and duress and oppression. Giver of all, we thank thee. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared always. Giver of all, we thank thee. For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, and to help those who are suffering in body, and for those who are suffering in body or in spirit. For all those who have worked so that others might live with some health, with some dignity, with some freedom. Giver of all, we thank thee. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose, for those communities who live not by our fears, but by our hopes, and not by our words, but by our deeds. Giver of all, we thank thee. I pray that all of us will have a safe and meaningful Thanksgiving and find several moments of thanks living as well. Amen. Source of life, most ancient of days, complete the work you have begun in us. Release through us a flow of mercy and gentleness that brings water where there is desert, that brings healing where there is hurt, that brings peace where there is violence, that brings beauty where there is ugliness, that brings justice where there is brokenness, that brings patience where there is awkwardness, that brings beginnings where there are dead ends. O God, waken in us gratitude for our lives, love for every living thing, joy in what is human and holy, praise for you. Renew our faith that you are reality beyond our grasp, but within our reach. Past our knowing, but within our searching. You are the disturber of the assured and the assurer of the disturbed. A destroyer of illusions and a creator of dreams, and the source of silence and music and love and solitude and light and darkness and death and life. And now I invite you to pray the prayer that Jesus taught us to pray, saying together, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. One of our concessions during this time of COVID is that we no longer pass the collection plate, alas. Instead, we have our plates over here on the side table. There's two up front, and this beautiful arrangement of the harvest put together by Alice and Lynn. And we invite you, after the service or when you are so inclined, if you would like, you can drop a donation into those plates, and it will, I can assure you, go to the same place it has always gone, which is Betsy's desk. The morning offering for the ongoing life and work and collective ministry that is this church will now be given and received.
Sweet
Please be seated. Thank you for joining our service this day. Let me just thank once again Larry Unger and Eric Boudman for being with us this morning. I also want to thank Lynn Taff and Alice Moylan for coming and putting together this gorgeous Thanksgiving festive arrangement with a cornucopia in honor of the season and the holiday this week. This afternoon, we will our schedule continues. We will be hosting a family service at 5 p.m. here, featuring jazz pianist Steve Sussman, who will be on hand to help us lead that service. The family service is designed to be relatively short, quick, and fun. You show up at 5. Service is about 45 minutes long. We then adjourn into the parish hall for soup and bread, coffee and tea. I can tell you the soup is going to be fantastic today because I made it. It's Campfire Cauldron. That's all I'm going to say. Please join us if you can for a time of fellowship after the service today as well. Let me just say that we are kicking off our holiday season with the 3 ways we can help local folks in need. They are listed here. We have the annual food drive for the Council on Aging food pantry, and there's already food I see out in the breezeway here. We have the gift card drive for Waltham Watch CDC, and we have the mitten tree to benefit the Second Step shelter for women and kids in Newton. And the Christmas tree that's set up on the table outside is for that purpose, I believe. Pretty sure that's where Robert Jones set that up. Information here about that in the order service as well. Let me also just note that there will be no choir rehearsal this Thursday, Thanksgiving. Excuses. Instead, there will be a choir rehearsal, a double rehearsal, in preparations for All Music Sunday, this next Sunday, the 28th, from 2 to 4 p.m. I think that's it in the way of announcements. We're going to let Larry and Eric do a little intro to our hymn, our closing hymn, and then we'll launch into it. Number 529, Let All Things Now Living. some other place. May God be your companion, and you be God's friend as you walk together through all the days of your life. And at the journey's end, may you find the welcome of God's love. It keeps us all. Amen. And happy Thanksgiving.
Hey, Jacob.
Hey, Max.
I have this dilemma.
Sure, what's up?
So, Thanksgiving's coming up.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And everyone's talking about how you should always know where your turkey comes from. But I don't know where my turkey comes from.
What do you mean you don't know where your turkey comes from?
I mean, I don't know where turkeys come from.
What? Max, how do you not know where turkeys come from? Everybody and their mother knows where turkeys come from.
So, I know an apple comes from an apple tree.
Okay.
And a pear comes from a pear tree.
True.
But where do turkeys come from?
Oh, come on, Max. A poultry.